an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I belong to the Rocks Glen Traditional Group. I hope sometime you'll come and meet us, visit us there. My dry age is May the 18th, 1973. I have a sponsor. I think these things are very important that you know this, because they tell you something about where I am, where I've been, and what I'm about. I had the same sponsor for 44 years, and that man taught me so much about the principles that we practice in the program and taught me how to apply them. Now, I chose, Ali and I talked, and then I changed my mind, and I chose this. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. You know, it's always amazing to me that when I prepare, I don't know about you, but when I prepare talks, sometimes the talk gets taken out of my hands and I've got to go where the Spirit moves me. And what really has been impressing me as I have written what I want to say, but also what I've thought about it, is that idea that we have the proper attitude. What does that mean? And as I've gone through my life, my sober life, it seems to me that what it's really talking about is the growth in the depth, as you said, Teresa, in the depth of the surrender that makes the relationship with God ever deeper. And that's the way I set it up in what I'm talking about. And that's so just as, so I'll get to it. I did not have a proper attitude to God for a lot of years. And I certainly didn't work at prayer and meditation. And I'm not talking about before AA. I'm talking about in AA. That doesn't make me a bad person. That makes me a person like you, who's here and who has to grow. If there's one thing I am learning, 47 years of sobriety does not entitle me to sit on my butt and do nothing. It's ever as important to work and do the spiritual work. And that's the way my life has developed. And so that means we talk about God. And that brings me to William James. I like so often to think about what he said. He said, you know, he was talking about attitudes to God. And he said, the most convincing evidence of God lies in our interpersonal experience, not in our concepts, not in a religious affiliation, and not in a personal concept, but in our experience. And everything I know and everything that I have to say tonight is all about experience. My interpretation you may not agree with, but it's my experience. And I'm going to start with May the 20th, 1973. Up to that time, I drank alcohol. I started when I was 5 and I carried on for 35 years. And got to the place that I'm describing. On the morning of May the 20th, 1973, I did an assessment. I was homeless, I was penniless, I had no friends, I had not a clue about how life could work. And as I assessed my life, I had tried everything. I had tried education, religion, convent, men, sex, success, whatever. And here I am, I'm penniless, I'm homeless. I don't know what to do, how to proceed. And it hit me. You don't know how to live, Mildred. Get out of here. The faster, the better. And whatever's on the other side, we'll take what's on the other side. And so I asked the nurse to get my coat, and I had a spiritual experience. I can tell you that the last person on the planet that day was expecting a spiritual experience was me. I don't know what else to call it. I did not pray. I did not really, I think I believed there was a God, but any God I conceived of, I hated. And yet, here I am, I conceded to my innermost self, as our book says, we concede we're alcoholic. I had done that years ago. Conceding by itself is good, but if it isn't followed by action, nothing changes. I had conceded that years ago. I didn't want to stop drinking. So here I am. I conceded, I don't know how to live. My God, that's powerful. I don't know how to live. And in a heartbeat, I was changed. I did not expect that. I remember standing there, and if that morning you had said to me, what just happened? I would have said, I don't know. Something happened. I'm not the same. And you see, this is also something. I think when we get to step 11, we're talking about soul-sized questions. We're not fixing the third dimension. My soul that morning knew. I remember thinking, saying out loud, I don't have to drink anymore. And that was true. The compulsion and the obsession was taken. And I've not had it back in 47 years. Has it been easy? Nice, not always, but I've not had the compulsion and the obsession to drink. It was a clean visitation of grace. You see, what I see now is that for me to move on in life, I had to be freed of the compulsion. And I was, like, from then on. See, I think God has a journey for each of us. I don't think God has a plan. I don't believe that. I think God is good and God wants me to move forward. But I don't think God has a plan that says Mildred has to be in Toronto. I'm the one that made that choice. And so I think the way I see it, what needs to happen for the growth of our soul will happen if we provide the possibility. And for me, I had to give in. The book says we had to concede. I conceded, I don't know how to live. And you know what the 47 years have been? They have been 47 years of learning how to live, learning how to do life and to get to the place where I am today. It's absolutely amazing to me. You know, so I'm going back to this, the quotation I chose, the proper attitude. What should be my proper attitude to God? Well, I think that the morning of May the 20th, 1973, I got a taste of it. You don't have any power, Mildred. You belong to me. And I didn't know all that. But as I stand on the planet today, I've got a completely different attitude than I had 47 years ago. You know, I think that's what step one is really all about. That was my first surrender, so to speak, to see. And what I learned about that God that morning, I learned a couple of things. I learned that God responds when you give in. I learned that that power is loving and gracious. I should have been kicked to the curb, not given freedom as I was. It's because what had I done on the planet except hurt people, hurt myself, be angry, and all that kind of thing. I had earned, if you want to talk earned, I don't believe we earned grace, but if you want to talk earned, I had earned problems. And here I got freedom. And what I experienced was a power that does the unbelievable. And so how do you move forward with that? Well, on page 59 of the big book, it says, there's one who has all power. That one is God. I didn't know how to live with that. I didn't know what that meant. I had no concept. You know why? Because I had this thing called self. And I think that if I'm going to move forward in God consciousness, I have to get rid of self. And what is self? Because sometimes, we talk about self and we talk about self. What is self? Self is the diametric opposite to God. Self is that part of me that feels separate, that part of me that wants what I want, and I don't care what you want or what God wants. Our book says some powerful things about it. It says it's the root of the trouble, and it says I have to be rid of it or it kills me. God makes that possible. I didn't make that up. It's in the book. Because I think that as I have come to recognize or have an idea of who this God is, I can see that self can't stand. It can't exist. Something is going to have to happen to it, or else the person carrying that self is going to get killed. It says it in the book. Killed, we drink, we die. And then it says, we can't get rid of it by ourselves. We have to have God's help. Now, who helped me with this? I had two people who came into my life that I want to talk about just briefly, because they taught me some things that I didn't know. And one was Sandy Beach. I met him when I was about 3 years sober, and we became friends. And he took me aside one day and he said, Mildred, I don't think you get this. You came in a 2-in-1 package. I didn't know what that meant. What he was trying to teach me was we live in the third dimension, but we also live in the fourth dimension. And we live in those two dimensions at the same time. I didn't know that. What are we taught? We're taught acquire, achieve, accomplish, be somebody. And it's all false. It's false because if I have to be somebody, that means I'm not already somebody. And then page 55 goes right down the tube, because page 55 says, deep within me is the fundamental idea of God. And if the fundamental idea of God is within me, it's not possible that I'm nobody. So I began to understand why self had to go, because self is that representative of the stuff, the body, everything that's impermanent, everything that is separate. And that's the part of me that is never enough, that always wants more, that's always angry, that's always fearful. That's how I lived. What Carl Jung said, he said he knew that there was a secret gnawing at the roots of our being. See, so that's the third dimension. What's the fourth? The book says we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension. And that's where the grace is given to us, in the fourth dimension. What is that? The spirit, the life force, goodness, oneness, peace, compassion, gratitude. That's the fourth dimension. And here we are living in those two dimensions at one time. I think that this is what life is really about, that I'm here in this third dimension, not to get stuff, but to learn how fourth dimension, how I practice it in the third dimension. And then that's how I grow in God consciousness, because what does step 11 say? That's what I'm here to do, through prayer and meditation, to improve my conscious contact with God. And that's another way of saying that portion that I took out of the big book, that I have a proper attitude. And I just described to you in having that experience in on May the 20th, that God started developing that proper attitude in me so that I can fulfill my purpose here and that God can fulfill its purpose here. So that's where I think step one really takes a hit. And that's how we get started on this, that I have no power of my own. I thought step one meant that I have no power over alcohol, but I don't believe that's not enough. I think it's really, because the book says there is one who has all power, that one is God. May you find him now. And if I don't have a proper attitude toward life, toward God, toward myself, toward the whole world, it isn't going to work that way. So the book says through prayer and meditation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about prayer because that's the big stuff, because it's about the opportunity to communicate with the source. I used to think about prayer as an opportunity to ask for stuff, talk to God, and so on. I think it's really the communication, developing the relationship with God. See, many people, including me, when I thought of God, I experienced anger, blame, and the book says the main problem rests in the mind. I think wrong. I think bad. And if I'm angry with God because God made the world, somebody said to me just recently, why did God make the world the way it is? Obviously, because it's the best way for us to fulfill our purpose here. And I have a mind, and it's up to me to choose how I use that mind. I can use it in anger and blame and all that, or I can use it to communicate with the power that is within me. And then I have the will to choose how I'm going to live. Evil and pain and war and poverty, they're not God's doing. And so what are we here for? We're here to wake up and to stop that. I love what Scott Peck said. He said alcoholism is a blessing. And I think I absolutely agree with that. He said it breaks us visibly. It certainly broke me visibly, and it forced me into doing something and to taking that opportunity to change. I think it's absolutely amazing. That's our work on the planet. I have a feeling, since I'm being very open about things, I have a feeling, and you don't have to, I don't know if this is true or not, doesn't really matter. But I think as I look at my progress in living, my progress in changing, look how my attitude becomes more proper, how I am more willing to surrender to God, how I'm more willing to be that instrument. I think we have many lifetimes. I like to think we do. And I've read a lot lately about, some of the scientists who believe that too, because I think that to me would make me very happy, because then the work that I do in this lifetime, I get to carry it on, and then you say, well, what are we here for? I love the fact I've never seen this before. And in the last 5 months, I see it almost every book I pick up, every lecture I listen to, coming from philosophers, coming from spiritual teachers, coming from scientists who say that we're here because God gets to experience himself through us. I'm not going to argue that either one way or the other, but if you really start to think about it, there have been some great teachers who've said that. I love when the scientists come up with things like that. So what are our problems in prayer? I think number one, we don't know who we are. If I think that I'm here to get stuff from God, I'm going to have problems in prayer. Second, treating God as if he's the cosmic concierge, and that's his job. I've got a problem here. I need stuff. Give me stuff. I don't believe that either. The third problem I had with prayer, I wanted God to do my will. I knew how Doris should be. I knew how life should be. And I wanted God to do the world the way I wanted. You know, I think that as we sit here in COVID, it's not impossible to sit here and say just also some of the objections that I have mentioned, like, why can't it get fixed and that kind of thing. And I think the fourth reason I had problems in prayer was this. I was not an honorable person. You couldn't trust me. And when I met Clancy, I remember one of the first things he said to me was, he said, Mildred, be honorable. And he used that word. He said, be where you said you would be, do what you said you would do, and be on time. And he said, if you start there, he said, and he was right, I think. Where do you start this business of being honorable when you've lived the way I lived for so many years? I just picked up this quote. The universe, this boggles my mind. The universe is in the process of awakening. Through you, the universe is becoming aware of itself. I think personally, there's a whole lot going on here that, you know, I never thought about. I just think that being alive is such a great, great gift. You know, I've said this various times. I've learned to love the sky. I've learned to see God in the sky. I was reading Eckhart Tolle one day, and he's talking about things, and no things. And space, the scientists tell us now, is not empty. Space has got stuff in it, God. And space, from the scientist point of view, they don't say that, but what I learned to do was go out and look at space. And I get it, because that's where that no-thingness is, no-thingness, which, whatever you want to call it, energy, God, higher power. I think it's a wonderful thing. I just think that there's so much in, and a lot of the ancients have said so much of the stuff that we're now learning is real through science. So back to prayer. Shame on me, but the first 21 years that I was sober, I had no prayer life. I didn't pray. I didn't really think that I had no idea of really what the spiritual life was like. And once I got sober, and once I got off Skid Row, where I lived for the first year that I was sober, I got a job and I became successful and I made a lot of money. And I was busy doing third dimension stuff, buying houses, making money, having relationships with men, etc., etc., etc. You know what I learned in the first 21 years? Something that's absolutely crucial. There's nothing in what I'm saying that hasn't been necessary. I had to learn how to live in the third dimension. I started drinking when I was 5, and therefore I didn't learn how to do life. I didn't learn how to do relationship. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't understand how the world worked. And you know, when I think about it, my life has been perfect, because in that 21 years, I learned how to take care of myself. I learned how to do third dimension. That wasn't the end of it, because we've got fourth dimension to get into. When I was 18 years sober, another thing happened. And one day I'm driving home, and on the dashboard, I saw this statement: the day will come when faced by a self-imposed crisis, you will have to make a decision. Either God is everything or God is nothing. And I can tell you, I did not know what my decision was going to be. And I made the decision, okay, I'm going to choose everything. And things started to change. I was 18 years sober, and I started to pray a little bit, but I really didn't know how to pray. And you know, that's kind of amazing if you don't know. I spent 15 years in a convent, and you would think that somebody who spent 15 years in a monastery would know how to pray. But at least I was acknowledging God. I was acknowledging that there was something beyond sex and money and men and cars and houses and all that stuff. And then at 21 years, I went into a depression, and I decided again, I'm suicidal, decided to take my life. And again, I had one of those experiences, and I knew it was okay. I didn't know how things were going to work out, but I understood something. I understood that it was going to work out. And that's when I was told, my mentor told me to make a prayer practice. That changed everything. See, I think if I leave it up to my worst self, if you will, if I leave it up to my third dimension experience, if I leave it up to my feelings, I'm not going to pray. And my mentor said, you need a practice. And we sat down and we put together a practice. If you do that, you see, because this last while in particular, because I've been doing a Friday night class, and people have been calling and saying, I don't think that my prayer is any good. Why? Because I don't feel good. Feelings get in the way. You know what? Your feelings of not sleeping well can get in the way. Your feelings can get in the way because somebody looked at you wrong. Your feelings can get in the way because of something you fear doing the next. Anything can get the feelings going. That's why discipline, commitment, I think, is so important in this business because we're dealing with God. We're not dealing with what Mildred thinks. And so if you do make a prayer practice, don't make it huge. Because, you know, if you start saying, well, you know, I'm going to pray for this length of time, I don't do that. I make it manageable so that I'm going to sit in the silence 2 minutes at a time, 3 times today. I'm going to be kind. I've got to go to the grocery store. I'm going to be kind to the clerk, that kind of thing. But so at the end of the day, when you get to the part in the book where it tells us what to check out at the end of the day, you can take a look at how you carried out the things that you decided to do in your prayer practice. And you can change your prayer practice. My prayer practice now, I meditate. I started to meditate when I was, after that 21-year period when I felt depressed, where I was suicidal. I knew I had to start, I knew I had to meditate or I was a goner. And it was at that time I got this prayer practice and my life took off. My life took off in ways big stuff happened, I developed a more proper attitude to God. One of the ways was my heart started to open up. I know that that sounds schmaltzy. I don't know how else to describe it, but I used to be pretty stiff. I used to not like people. And I remember the day when my sponsor said to me, he said, "You're quoting page 55 a lot, that God is within people." He said, "If you want to continue quoting that," he said, "you better start treating people different." And he was right. As he said, you don't have to like everybody, but you do have to love them. And so that started to change the way I felt about life. I think time is going. One of the unbelievable things the last couple of months, I have taken to page 86, 87, and 88. Maybe you have a long time ago. I knew they were there. I told people to read them. I read them and didn't follow it. About 3 months ago, I took a look at what was really in those pages. And I can't believe what I've missed. Because Bill says here, we can make some valuable suggestions. I think he made stunning suggestions. Because if you go through this, I can live my life off these 3 pages now. I can live my life from following simple instructions. It doesn't take elaborate, convoluted ideas, because he says, when we retire at night, this is what we do. And he gives a whole list of questions, and they're perfect questions. I've never yet, since I'm doing this, I've never yet come across something that's happened that isn't taken care of by this. And I like it then to write down at least one thing that I want to remember for the next day. And then on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. That has changed my life. I think I was kind of doing that before, but I think, we go to bed at night and the subconscious stirs, and a lot of the old ideas and a lot of the fears and a lot of the things that are buried there come up, and we wake in the morning, and before we know it, if you haven't got a routine, before you know it, you're going into the day with some of that negativity. And if I'm going to have a proper attitude, I'm really starting to love those 2 words, a proper attitude. Because what I see is that as my life has moved along in these 47 years, my attitude in each event has changed to make me a better instrument, so that that power can use me as it uses you, as it will use anybody if we allow it. You see, I don't think the power doesn't change. It's up to me to become a better instrument. So he says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. And consider what I'm going to do. So often, if I don't do that, the day gets to me and I'm confronted with difficulties that I should have prepared for. If I know that I'm going to meet you and I don't like you, and that sometimes I don't like you, I can prepare for that in the morning. And instead of, I become more useful then. Instead of being mean, nasty, and whatever, I can do a better job of that. And then it talks about indecision, and it talks about inspiration, and it talks about intuitive. This power is within me, and it will give me a direction if I am awake to it. And it says we don't struggle. Just think about this. How many times do you ask somebody, how are you? And they say, I'm struggling. I used to say it. I don't struggle anymore. I don't most of the time. It says we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration becomes a working part of the mind. We find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. You know, as I've gone through this, I've thought a lot about this. What am I doing here? What am I doing on the planet? I think about that a lot, actually. I don't think I'm here to give talks. I don't think I'm here to make money. I don't think I'm here to be famous or whatever. I think I'm here to be that instrument. And yesterday I was listening to something Eckhart Tolle was doing. And he talked about our life like this. And I'll pretty well close with that. He talked about our life like being a vertical and a horizontal. The vertical, as he said, there's nothing needs to change in that, because that's the God within us. Nothing needs to change there. But what needs to change is the horizontal, because where the vertical and the horizontal meet, that's the present moment. That's where I am. That's where my consciousness is. And by God, that's, as he said, this isn't going to change, but what's going to change is what we put into the horizontal and what we put into the world. And if you think about it, doesn't the world need that from us? It needs it from every one of us. And the more I look, the more, science, we're talking about oneness. We're talking about bringing the good in instead of all the negativity. As one of my friends, he sent me a little message the other day, and he said, Mildred, remember, he said, the more you change, the more you get right with God, the more of that goodness you put into the horizontal, and the world changes. Sometimes I think we get the idea that the world needs to change. You know who needs to change? Me. I can't change you. I can't change the world, but I can do this work. And the book finishes off then, as we go through the day, we pause. It took me years to get to this. And it says, many times each day we say, thy will, not mine, be done. I was always, even when I didn't realize it, I was about my will be done. It says many times each day. When I do that many times each day, life is beautiful. It really, and it says we're then in much less danger of all that excitement, etc. But this is not all. There's action and more action. So I see that my time is up. I what I've been trying to get across is this, that step 11 really gives us the opportunity to keep changing. God isn't going to change, but I'm the one that, as my attitude gets more clear, more open to God, or that power, however you want to put it, the more goodness I can bring into the world. I'm not happy with this talk, but I really know something good has taken place. Maybe I need to process it a little more. So anyway, blessings to all of you. Thanks.